Everyone, welcome back. Dave, we're here for another exciting episode. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. I've got alarms and everything else going off here because of the difference in time zones.
Yeah, so last week you were in Chicago. Where are you today?
I am in Las Vegas this week, so enjoying the sun. It's been a little windy, though, here, so I'm not so excited about that, but it definitely is a lot warmer than Chicago was.
Well, all you need now is maybe Eastern time. Then you'll hit all the time zones.
Yeah, we thought we might do it this next week. We talked about going to Boston, but then I backed back out because of how cold it's going to be this time of year. And so we're going to end up going to Louisiana, going down to New Orleans, and going over to Hot Springs in Arkansas.
That sounds awesome. I love to see that you're always out doing some adventurous things. But so tell me, what brings you to Las Vegas? Do you love
It
to
is
gamble?
work. Yeah, there's no fun this week. It is 100% work, and there is a lot of it going on, which is great. But you start at 6 o'clock in the morning with online meetings, and you end at 8 or 9, 10 o'clock at night with dinner appointments with other people. So
yeah, well, we know you're not a gambler, but at least you're out there having fun and enjoying at least a little bit of sun from last week.
Yeah, I gambled one time in my life, and it wasn't even my money. It was one of my clients that wanted to take us out when I was first moving to Las Vegas. And I was so depressed with the amount of money she lost trying to help us win money. I said, never again. Even if somebody else is paying for it, I'm not going. It's no thanks.
I had my wife's grandma one time. We were in Mesquite. We were visiting her, and she gave us a thing of nickels and said, go to the nickel slots. My wife and I sat down, and in about 20 minutes, we went through all the nickels, and I said, what do we get? And they said, oh, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, this time with her. So she was Joe DiMaggio's aunt, the baseball player. She was a client of mine. She's passed away at this time, but she was very wealthy. She fell in love with my wife. It treated her like she was her granddaughter. And we went out to dinner one night at one of the nice restaurants here. And then she said, oh, let's go gambling. I'll pay. So we went through probably $10,000. And this was back in the late 90s. And the only reason she didn't get more is because she couldn't get the credit card machine to work, which this was normal for her. It wasn't breaking her budget or anything else. But I'm like, that's like 3 months of income for me at that time. I'm like, this is absolutely insane, ridiculous. And I'm like, again, not my money, but I'm so depressed about this whole thing. But I think her goal was to have us win a few $1,000s and then just let us keep it. But I'm like, look, you're my client. We're friends. This isn't our lives. Yeah, maybe your family does this to you every time they come into town, but let's not ever do this again.
Yeah. When I come see you in Memphis, I'm hoping we'll do something different. Maybe some good barbecue or something.
Yeah, we're going to take you disc golfing too when you come. That's
yeah.
The other huge thing that my boys and I are in. So you're going to have to come disc golfing with us.
I'll bring my own disc when I come. I've got a handful of them.
Okay, that'd be great. If not, we're building up. So by the time you get there, we may have plenty for you.
Well, great. Well, and for those joining us live and for those watching on replay, thank you for being here, for being part of the show. So what we do is we bring Dave on and we ask him a million questions. I have a whole group of questions right here for him. And we encourage you to submit your questions. So either send it through theprosperityguy.com, or if you're watching live, go ahead and submit your retirement question. I mean, we're breaking everything down from reverse mortgage to Medicare to Social Security. Dave, the list just keeps going on and on. I mean, how do you balance all of this?
It never ends. And I hope at some point it will, CR, because we're just getting ready to launch a long-term care webinar that's very detailed, very thorough. We've revamped our Medicare webinar. It's going to be a 2-hour webinar now instead of one because there's so much content I felt that people need to get access to. And then we're going to do another one breaking into all the laws, all the law changes, what's going on, so people can better understand their retirement goals and what they have to look forward to. So yeah, I don't know. And then we've got 3 or 4 others coming with another guy that we're working with that everybody's going to love the content. So just all about education. Let's just get people educated, help them gain the knowledge they need. Now, if you want to learn as much as I have, great. If not, you don't need to. Please understand that we're here to help you do the right things and make the right decisions for yourself.
That's awesome. And I love being part of that. And Dave, let's get into our first one here from Susan. Do you say that fees go up with the amounts of involvement in the self-directed IRA?
No, when you look at it, usually for most of them, now depending on how they're structured, most of them are going to have a flat fee. So you're going to have an administrator that's going to charge you a flat fee. Now, if you got a situation where you've got like a custodian that's doing all of your bill payments. They're doing all of your accounting. They're taking care of everything. You got multiple rental properties or something in there. Yeah, the fees are going to go up probably quite a bit because of the extra work they're going to put into it. But it really comes down to how much you're willing to do. If you're going to do most of the management and then allow them to just do the paperwork, most of them are going to be flat fee regardless of how much money you have inside of those self-directed plans.
So Dave, right now you teach a self-directed webinar, and tell me about that. What is so intriguing, or what inspired you to start that particular webinar?
Couple of things. Number one is I think there's a lot of bad information out there of telling people they should get into them. You've got a lot of people that are doing seminars to try to get people to take their money out of their 401ks, put them into these self-directed plans, into businesses or real estate they know nothing about. All of a sudden they want to tell them that because they're older and they've got money that they can be experts in things that they've never known anything about up until that point. So I did it for that reason, to help identify some of the pitfalls that people can get into. But I also realized for the right person, it can be a great thing, that it can be something very helpful for their retirement. Now, that's only about 10% of America. But for that 10%, self-directed plans can be a wonderful thing to help them get through the retirement, to have a retirement that can maybe produce them substantially more money based upon their skills and the things they invest in.
So what you're saying is not everybody's retirement is exactly the same.
No, not at all. And in fact, everyone's is different. I don't know of anyone that I've done any planning for that their retirements looked exactly like someone else's. Now, they may have the same strategies, but it's going to be with different amounts. It's going to be for different reasons. So everyone's going to be different for sure.
All right. Well, Dave, let's jump down to our next one from Gary. Gary asks, do you know the IRS audit rate for solo 401k plans? Are there different audit rates depending on the account balances?
Gary, I do not know the answer to this one. I know when you look across the board for anything that the IRS is auditing, the numbers are very low. Now, they continually talk about trying to increase those numbers, but the IRS has got a problem. And it doesn't mean that you should go out and do things that you shouldn't be doing and you do illegal stuff. I'm not telling you that, and please do not take that from here, because we need to stay in compliance with the laws the way they are. But the problem the IRS has, they've had a hiring freeze for years now. So what does that mean? That means that if someone retires, we don't bring anyone new in. We just allow that position to stay vacant, and they've had those hiring freezes. Well, when you look at that situation, like I started accounting back in the mid to late 1990s. Well, at that time, many of the people I was working with were in their 50s at that time. Now, obviously, they're all retired. They were the knowledge base of the IRS. Well, now you say, hey, we want to extend our audits and we want to start auditing more people. It's a 3 to 5 to maybe even 7-year window before they're at a level where they can effectively audit, these individuals. So the IRS has got this gap here that's saying, hey, yeah, if we're going to start auditing more, we better either figure out enough artificial intelligence to do it, or we've got to understand that we've got probably a 5 to 7 year window before it's going to be real effective.
Well, Dave, as a CPA, we talk about audit. How much does that come into conversation as you're out talking about taxes? And especially like you're in Vegas, you're meeting with clients. How much does this topic come up?
It comes up all the time. And again, the thing that you've got to understand, you want to stay within the laws. There's no value to get outside of those. Now, one of the problems with tax law is it's great. You've got a lot of things where the government can't completely define what you should be doing in a given fact or circumstance. Like, when we look at our retirement plans, there can be situations where we've got gray areas that we've got to worry about. And that's the problem. But we want to make sure we're staying in the guidelines so that we don't have an issue. Because the unfortunate thing is if you do have an issue at some point in the future, it's going to be extremely costly for you. And you may think life's going along well. And again, as a retirement risk consultant, the last thing I want to say, hey, we produce this retirement plan that's going to get you through everything. And then all of a sudden find out you did something illegal with the IRS and it's all gone. And there's nothing you can do. I mean, they're the last people that you want to have a problem with.
Well, Dave, the one thing I really admire and I'm impressed by, and I hope people that are watching it feel the same, as a retirement risk consultant, you have not only the ability to go through and talk about retirement and everything, but you also have the tax perspective that together a financial planner just doesn't have. They just have one side or the other. But what you have is you have this dual combination. So that's why I bring up the audits or the tax laws, because there's so many issues that we're dealing with retirement that they don't understand that there's a lot of things that they need to be in compliant with or make sure they take care of it. And single-handedly, you kind of take care of all of this.
Yeah, I do. And it is difficult for financial advisors to go backwards. I mean, when you look at the amount of time that it took to become a CPA and the amount of years that I spent learning the laws and all the details, it's pretty hard for someone, once they get to a point in their career that they're a successful financial planner, to be able to transition and say, hey, I'm going to go back to school for 5, 6 years. I'm going to take these exams. I'm going to have to go, get under someone else so I can understand all this stuff. Luckily, I had that base. And I think that's one thing that's added a lot to what I do. And then it became, okay, now let's add the financial planning side on here so we can start eliminating all these risks. Because another one, CR, that people don't understand is when you mess up in your retirement plans, those penalties are huge. I mean, some of them can be 50%. So can you imagine, one, you have to pay a tax, maybe a 37 and plus, depending on what state you live in, and now you get a 50% penalty, the money's gone. So there's just no value to say, hey, I'll risk it here. Hopefully the audits it doesn't catch me. It's 1 to 3% probably on average of what the audit risk is. But if you're 1 to 3%, you're in big trouble.
Exactly. And that's why we're here, Dave, to talk about this and help educate those who are watching and participating in this. Dave, the next one from Leo: what are the pros and cons of consolidating multiple IRAs from different employers?
Leo, I really don't see any cons to this at all. What I see are really the pros. And the biggest pro is that you just have less to worry about. I mean, if you've got one account and you're able to have everything inside of there, you're able to diversify everything out. Now, again, depending on what investments you have available, maybe you've got a situation where you're investing in ETFs or something, and one company's looks different than another's, or allows you to get access to something that you may otherwise not be able to get access to. But for the majority of people, the easiest thing is to consolidate those accounts. You have one statement, you have one person you're dealing with. They can see the bigger picture. I think that's one of the problems too, is oftentimes we piecemeal our planning. And yes, you've got to have multiple people involved, but you start piecemealing. And I see this all the time. It's like, well, these guys handle this part of my investment. These guys handle this part of my investment. And, she over here is going to handle this part. Well, they don't see the whole picture. And if you don't see the whole picture, it's pretty hard to put the right plan together, because there's parts that are left out. I see it all the time too, when we talk to people, and it's always interesting. Is the first conversation, they're guarded, and I get it. Especially we're doing these Zoom meetings, they don't know us extremely well, and they're a little guarded, and they tell us this story. Well, then we start putting their plan together, and all of a sudden the story starts changing. Well, I forgot to tell you about this $200,000 I had there. Well, I forgot to tell you about this 100 grand that's over here. And so it's just part of the process, but we want to know the true story so we can put the right plan together.
Well, Dave, I can't even imagine what that would be like. You sit down. I mean, I'm assuming it happens with tax as well, especially if you're meeting a client for the first time. Is not everybody's willing to lay all their cards out at the same time and say, hey, Dave, help me out, because they want to be able to figure out where you can really help them. But in all reality, if you don't lay everything out, it just takes a longer process to get this taken care of.
Yeah, it's just like me coming, going to someone out on the street and saying, look, I want to go to Southern Utah to CCR. He lives in Enterprise. How long is it going to take me? Oh, they're going to look up on their little GPS and say, it says here are 2 hours. It's going to take you to get there. Well, they're assuming I have a car. Maybe I got a horse out there. Maybe I'm walking. Maybe I'm going to bike. This is a problem we have with our retirement planning. Is the same issue. If we don't have all that information, unfortunately, we as advisors have to start making some assumptions. And if we don't have all that information, all of a sudden we're giving you the wrong answer. 2 hours, that's great. You get on your bike, and by the time you get out to the Valley of Fire, you're like, hey, wait, I don't see Enterprise anywhere close to this.
Yeah. Well, I think that planning process is exactly what you're talking about, making sure you get the right information. But Dave, let's go back to this 401k piece, because we talked about this last time. As we're diving in and talking about 401ks or consolidating multiple IRAs, we hear this all the time, that people are leaving their job or moving or transitioning, and then they just don't take everything with them. So there's money out there, or they just don't know what to do. So my question is how do we consider and put all this together when we're always changing jobs or trying to position ourselves? Because I feel like a lot of times that's where the mistakes happen, because we don't see it, and so we forget it.
Yeah, unfortunately, in the changing world of retirement, we've all got issues with this, because people aren't staying at jobs as long as they used to stay, and you're not getting this consistent situation. The biggest recommendation I can give to anyone is handle that 401k as soon as you possibly can after you've left. For most people, I would not leave it with that plan. I would roll it into an IRA as soon as you possibly can. Now, why? A couple of reasons you want to do that. And the biggest one is you don't want to forget about it. you could have a situation where all of a sudden you just forget about it and you don't remember that money's there. Well, then the second one, you move, and now all of a sudden they have no way of getting into contact with you. So it's like transfer the money while you're thinking about it, update your address, get everything done, and then that way you don't have to worry about it. And the other one I'd to say is don't liquidate it. That's the other problem that oftentimes people are going to do when they switch these jobs, is they just slowly keep liquidating their accounts. It's like, no, roll it over here, build it into your IRA that hopefully you've already got. And hopefully it's a Roth IRA. You've been able to set it up that way, but start making those transfers immediately so you don't lose it. Because again, there's so many people that have money out there. I went to dinner with a client the other night. It was actually quite entertaining. Is he keeps getting these notices from these companies saying that he's got unclaimed property. And I said, look, I can take care of this. All I've got to do is go look online. So I go online, I look up his name, and there's nothing there. They're just kind of baiting him into seeing if they can find something for him. So then I look up his company, there's nothing there. Well, then I find his wife, and she's got less than $25 out there. Yes. So here he is thinking, I've got all this money, and I send him a text. I'm like, you got $25. I'm not even wasting my time to go get it for you. And he laughed, and he's like, please don't. But many people have thousands of dollars. I talk about my own story. I've now recuperated or got back somewhere around $7,000 that I had no idea was sitting out there this last year, that I finally just started doing some searches and found. And you got people that have, tens, if not hundreds of thousands in some cases.
Yeah, exactly. Well, great advice, Dave. Let's jump over to Ken's question. Is there a limit to the interest paid on the loans paid, or is it just set at AFR, which I'm assuming is the applicable federal rate?
Yeah, and I think what he's talking about here is when we borrow money from some of these retirement plans, we've got to set an interest rate. And I think it was a solo 401k that we were talking about. You can use the AFR rate that's used all the time for various things inside the IRS guidelines. So you can use that. You can set it higher, again, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe there's a situation where it's to your advantage to have a little bit higher interest rate, so that money's going into the plan and you're able to build the assets that way. Because again, what you've got to understand, if you take that loan out, the money's now not in the market. So if you were getting an 8% rate of return inside of your plan, and now you took the $50,000 out of the plan, all it's getting back is the interest rate. So many people say, no, I want to do the lowest possible. Well, that means that your money only made 1 or 2% versus making the 7 or 8 that maybe it was making in the market when it was actively working for you.
Dave, I'm so impressed that you can recall when some of these questions were asked, be able to go back and dig this up, because this is not a plan where I don't go through and say, here's everything we're talking about. We're just kind of going through and randomly throwing questions at you, and to be able to go back and recall that, not only that, but to go through and give advice. I totally think that's amazing.
Well, thank you. I do my best. It is hard sometimes when you're teaching 3 or 5 webinars and in a given week, and you've got a ton of meetings you've gone through, and you've studied a bunch of material to realize where they're at, but we'll do our best.
And I want to encourage you, if you're watching live, go ahead and submit your retirement questions, and we'll get to them if we can between all of our other questions. And then again, if you're watching on replay, go ahead and submit those at theprosperityguy.com on the contact page. You can submit your questions. We can get those answered. Dave, I've got we still got some time here. So let's get to Joan's question. Is there an age cutoff to be able to being able to contribute to a Roth?
No, the biggest issue you have here, Joan, with the Roth is you've got income limits. So if you're making no income, if you have no earned income, and so you're in retirement, you're not going to have a cutoff there of, basically because of your age, it's going to be because you have no income. So that's the biggest thing that you've got to look at, is you've got to have earned income to be able to do it. And it's got to be within the gap too, meaning you could earn too much income, which most retirees aren't going to have W-2s and self-employment income that's going to be above those limits. But it's more based upon your income earnings than it is about a period of time.
Well, let's take Joan, for example. She's looking at this age cutoff. I'm guessing she's pretty close to retirement here, or helping one of her clients through that. But what kind of advice or warning do you give? Because I feel like a lot of times we're so close to retirement that we panic, and we try to do different things to make it work.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, and I've seen it recently with people that I've been working with. Is number one, don't quit. Meaning sometimes we get to a point, and it's especially when people have been on my webinars and they realize I've not done everything anywhere close to the way I should have. And it can become very overwhelming, because you're saying, wait a second, I've spent 40 years not doing this. If I'd done it the way he's telling me to do it now, things could have been much different. Well, don't quit on that. That doesn't mean that you did the wrong thing. It just means you didn't have the right education. So, the fact that you saved money in a tax deferred bucket, hey, at least you saved money. At least you have something there. So that's one of the things that I think people need to look at is to, number one, don't quit. That while you're waiting to get a meeting with us, while you're waiting to move forward, just keep moving forward with what you've been doing. Don't all of a sudden just hold back and stop doing everything, because it could take us a month or two to get everything back in place. So just keep moving. And then once you get with us, we'll help you redirect everything. We'll help you make those decisions. Now, some of you face deadlines. We get those calls all the time where someone's like, hey, next Wednesday, I got to have a final answer. Well, we'll do our best to solve that issue for you. But most people have a longer horizon where it's like, hey, a few $1,000s that you're going to invest somewhere in the next month before we get everything solved. It's not going to be the end all be all to your retirement. But unfortunately, some people will then delay it from a month to 6 months to 12 months. And if they stop doing everything, now they have no growth or no anything going on for their retirement.
And Dave, I want to bring up something else, because as we get closer to retirement, or maybe we start thinking about it, let's say we're in our 40s or 50s and we're starting to really think about it. I received a call from a buddy that said, hey, there's this great stock out there. You can get it for 4 cents right now, but in the next month or two, it's supposed to skyrocket. So should I put as much as I possibly can? Should I take money out of my accounts and invest in this? And that's the kind of panic mode that we're talking about, because he's saying, I don't have anything for retirement right now, so I need to be able to build it up. And so this was his best case scenario for taking care of that.
Yeah, and you've got to understand, I am completely against most of this philosophy that I'm going to tell you. But I'm going to tell you it because I know the majority of Americans do this. Majority of Americans are out there playing the lottery. Majority of Americans, if they came to Las Vegas, they're gambling. But the majority of Americans that do it right have a set limit of what they're willing to lose. They're going to come into Las Vegas and say, hey, we've got $500 or $200 or $1,000. And when that's gone, we're done. And for some people I've talked to, it's like your story, 20 minutes, they were done. Other people, it lasted in the whole week and they thought they had a great time. When we talk about these risky stocks, when we talk about these penny stocks, you've got to be willing to lose whatever you're putting in there. Yep. And that's the thing you've got to understand. And you've got to be able to have your retirement still last if you lose everything that's in there. Tom Hegna, one of the top educators in insurance that we're working with now, one of his things he talks about is 1%. Hey, what, put 1% in those type of things. If it takes off, great. You made substantial amounts of money. But if it didn't completely disrupt your retirement like others that right now, I will tell you, CR, people are so greedy right now. You're going to see people completely destroyed financially when this market turns. And unfortunately, you're going to see some mental stress. You're going to see all kinds of issues because people aren't going to be able to handle the fact that they lost so much money so quickly.
And Dave, you bring up something that's really important to me, and that's, if we talk about, it's not really, but in the mental space, that's a really important topic. I know it's important to you. I know your son has as a business, he works with people in this space, but I think it's really important we get to this point just quickly, because I think a lot of people, like my buddy that says, yeah, I don't have anything, I'm going to hurry and save. It's the GameStop. It's trying to hurry and buy in Tesla now because of where they are, instead of waiting for those opportunities. But like you said, they're gambling with their future. It's like taking all their money. I mean, I read so many people on GameStop that took all the retirement out and dumped it into GameStop, hoping that that's going to solve an issue. But that mental part that comes with it, either through suicide or other mental illnesses or other things that come along with it, how much does that affect retirement, or how much does that affect those moving or headed toward retirement when something like that hits?
It's a huge issue, and it's one of my biggest concerns. If I look back at the pandemic and I look at what's happened from a pandemic side, hey, our kids have all been affected. Luckily my kids are in school 5 days a week. I'm grateful for that. But if you look at the emotional, the mental, the drain that's happened to our kids because they haven't been able to go to school and they haven't been able to spend time with each other. My next phase, personally, that I believe is we're going to have not only a middle life, but really a retirement crisis. The people are going to be too exposed to the market. There's no way this market can sustain doing what it's doing at the level it's doing it at. You're going to have all that fall off the table. And then all of a sudden you got this mental issue that's just going to stay there for years, because for them, they can't make it up. I mean, it's kind of like if you miss 2 years of school, it's pretty hard to get yourself caught back up by the time you graduate. You're always going to lag behind because there's so much basic education that you needed. When you get to retirement, it's a lot the same way. Hey, once we've lost that money, and now retirement looks different than we expected it to, very easy for people to get depressed, very easy for people to have very severe mental issues. And that's something I tell people when we talk about principal protection all the time, CR. again, I can be, well, what we find, hey, the market may went up 100% and you missed out and you got 6%, 7%. But I'll tell you, if that market drops, the emotional effect that's going to have on you is going to be way worse than saying, yeah, you know what, it would have been nice to make the 100%, but hey, I didn't lose anything. I just kept moving forward.
And I think that involves Bitcoin. I think that's one of the most volatile pieces I've seen in this whole industry that just is, you'll never be able to explain it, but you just have to ride those waves if you're part of that.
Well, and now the risk is so high. I mean, I go back to when I first got exposed to Bitcoin. I could be a multi-millionaire. I'd have over $100 million now, and I'm cool that I don't. But when you look at it there, it's like the penny stocks. Hey, you know what? If pennies go to $20, that's a huge gain, and we can make a lot of money. But when you're at $50,000 a coin, where do you go from there? I mean, it can't go to 200 to 300 tomorrow. So you've got to invest so much money to even potentially try to double your money. And what's the chances that it gets cut in half? And again, I'm not an expert on it. I talk to people all the time, and half of them, it's like the political landscape right now. Half think Bitcoin's doing to $1 million. The other half say there's no way it's going to fall off the table. What happens? But the risk now is so high. Now, other coins and people are dropping into the lower coins. Could they work? Maybe. But again, I would put a small portion for me, unless you study that, you fully understand and are willing to risk everything you have. Because again, with Bitcoin, there's nothing to protect it. I mean, there's no end game. It's an accounting system. You know, it's like taking QuickBooks and saying, hey, we're going to invest in it, and you know, debits and credits, and it all ties out, and it's there and it's secure, but it's all digital. There's nothing, again, if everything goes to where you need food and other items, Bitcoin's, there's nothing there to use.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dave, we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. So let me jump in and ask James's question. Does placing your assets in a trust change the tax impact in retirement?
James, depending on the type of trust that you're putting in, it can have tax impacts. But for most people, they're setting up a grantor trust, what we call a living trust. And no, it's not going to have any tax impact during your retirement years. But what you'll see is when you start transferring those assets to your kids and your whatever charities, whatever it is you're going to transfer them to, that it can have some tax impacts there. But really, it's just designed to allow you to have more control. It's allowed the process to be easier upon death to transfer assets, but really no benefits. Now, again, if you're looking at irrevocable trust, there are some pretty cool things you can do, and they can have some various impact. But for most people, they're not going to go that route.
And Dave, I wanted to squeeze this statement in. This one's from David. The 94% tax contributed to building the U.S. infrastructure, funded the national park system, built dams, bridges, and levees, which for the most part are now crumbling. Tell me a little bit of backstory and what this one means here for David.
Yeah, so what he's bringing up is the highest tax bracket we ever had during, since 1913 when taxes were brought about, was during 1944, 44, 45. During that period of time, it was after, as we were in World War II and approaching the end of World War II, and we had all these things that needed to be done. We had all the debt that was going on because of the war that needed to be solved. We had these outrageously high tax rates. And so what he's saying here is that money was used, much of it was used to help build the U.S. up, to build roads, bridges, those type of things. So we've got a situation now where all that's crumbling. In fact, it's interesting. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and you live in Utah, and you know, one of the biggest jokes in Utah is that I see memes all the time, is that there's always road construction. But you know what? Isn't always having road construction better than never having road construction and getting everything to a point? It's like Puerto Rico. They could never, I mean, the cost it would take them to completely get the road system back to where it needs to be, they've never invested. So they're never going to have good roads. Where Utah's just slowly, methodically done it. And I think it's a lot like our retirement. You know, if you just wait and you think, oh, I'm going to come in and do this one last hurrah and I'm going to save all the money, it's never going to happen. But if you do it time over time over time, and yeah, we're going to have a period of time where the government's going to have to increase taxes to cover this, as well as the debt, as well as Social Security, as well as Medicare, as well as, on and on and on. But that's what we've got ahead of us, and we've got to prepare for it.
Dave, talking about roads, tell me about how we can relate this to the roads in Puerto Rico and retirement there.
Yeah, well, they're full of potholes. I mean, if you look at it, I don't miss that at all. I will tell you, Tennessee roads are pretty good, but Puerto Rico's, I mean, you're destroying your car in there. I mean, it's the point. You hit some of those potholes in the whole front end. I mean, some people have their axles completely broken off. Well, it's the same with your retirement. If you've got a bunch of these potholes and you're not prepared for them, you're going to have some issues. I mean, you really are. And it's really my job to help you solve those. Let's get you to a point that you don't have to worry about it. I mean, there's nothing better, CR, getting up in the morning and just knowing that everything's good. Hey, life's good. Yeah, we may have some challenges. Yeah, the kids or ourselves may have some health issues, but we've got the money, we've got the resources, we're in a good place, and we can just enjoy our lives.
Yeah. Well, Dave, as we wrap up, I wanted to bring up we don't get to do this very often, so I wanted to bring this up. So we have testimonials. We get thousands and thousands of testimonials, but I pulled 2 of them up because I wanted to not only pat you on the back for a job well done, but just let those know who are watching how incredible you are in your presentations and all the things you do. So this one here from Rita, she said, Dave should be a required instructor for all new CPAs and wealth advisors to assure that they are not leading clients down the wrong path into their retirement years. I learned more than any course. And I just want to applaud you because getting something like this is very, it's just awesome to hear because we usually don't get the feedback like this. A lot of it's, well done. But when they go into depth like this, it really makes you feel like, hey, we're on the right track of education.
Rita, thank you so much for that. It's humbling on my side because as I look at what I'm trying to do, I am trying to provide the best education possible in as many topics so people can really understand at least the basics of things. Because again, the biggest thing about education, to me, it's not the education. The education is being able to ask the right questions. If you know the right enough information, you can ask the right questions and get the right answers. So I really appreciate your comments, and we'll continue to do our best. We're going to continue to expand. I was adding it up. We've got about 25 hours of content at this point from a webinar side. I expect by the end of the year, hopefully we're somewhere north of 30 by the time we get to the end of the year of the trainings we offer.
And Dave, I want to bring up one more because as we talked before the show, you and I were talking about trust, and it's about building trust, and it's in a brand. But the way that I feel personally connected to you is just the way you teach. Not only do we build trust, but then you teach in a way that I feel is very understandable. It's not a basic way. It's just something where I can listen to you and say, I get it. But there's other guys I go listen to and I get through and I said, I don't know if I learned anything or if I'm more confused. But this one here is from Hope. Very informative and easy to understand as Dave spoke in layman's terms. A lot of revelations about investing in the past versus now versus the future. I thought I was on the right investment path. And she goes on to say that she's now rethinking her entire retirement because of what you brought about.
What I love about this is her name, Hope. And I think that's what we've got in retirement is we need to look forward to it with hope. And again, thank you so much for the comments because it is a skill that I've been blessed with is the ability to connect with people at the level that they need to be connected with, which is a very simple human level. I'm not the guy. If you want somebody to go in and quote every tax code to you and get down into the very minute details, that's not me because the majority of America doesn't need that. What the majority of America needs is basic education to help them ask the right questions so they can make the right decisions.
And Dave, you do talk about that, but you have a tax guy that's just like that, that works for you, that does on the weekends, he studies tax law and he studies tax. And that's the thing is it's great to have somebody like that on your team. But like what you're saying is having somebody explain that to you may not always come across the same as if you're explaining the same concept that he's studying.
And that is one of the great things that we have, I will tell you, is we have unbelievable resources from the accounting side to the investment and insurance side to the overall planning side. I mean, we have those people, and you're right, that are going to spend hours in the code. And it's nice to be able to send an email that if there's a question, it's like, hey, is there something I'm missing here? Is there something I need to better understand? If we've got a question that I can't answer, hey, is there somebody here that can help me better understand this question? But you're right. I mean, it's a unique process. And again, we'll continue to educate you at a level that you can understand what we're teaching, at a pace that you can understand, with the quantity of education that you want. Now, again, you get to pick and choose what that is, but we're going to continue to provide a lot of content so you can consume as much as you want or as little as you want to get yourself where you need to be.
And Dave, since we're on YouTube Live also besides Facebook, I'm going to pick on one of your tax guys because it was hilarious. He does one, it's called The Law, where he goes through and explains that if he has to tell your CPA what the law is, then you have the wrong CPA. And so that was hilarious to me because there's a lot of people that watch his YouTube and then call him and say, hey, can you show me where you found that at so I can tell my CPA? And that's the kind of the thing I'm thinking about with retirement. The same thing. If you have a financial advisor, a financial planner, whatever whatever you call them, if you're asking Dave, if they're coming to you saying, hey, can you show me where this is at so I can go tell them, they're missing out on the same thing. They should understand the laws. They should understand what's happening, especially if it relates to tax. But we find so many people who just don't understand, and they're reaching for anything they can to get answers to help those professionals they're working with.
I had a horrible experience the other day with this thing, and I was working with one of my clients, and the advisors were trying to get them to buy some insurance through the retirement plan. And when you looked at it on the surface, what they were promoting was great idea. When you looked at the surface of it, and you got to understand on their side, they're going to make substantial amounts of money. So there's a huge incentive to do it. Like I going through all their spreadsheets, it's like none of the math even works in here. Your calculations, you're missing this, you've left this out. And we're sitting here in the meeting like, oh yeah, we didn't see that. Oh yeah, we didn't see that. And I'm just sitting here going, wait, you guys are putting these strategies together. They're going to affect people for decades, and you have no idea what you're even doing. Well, and then one of our other advisors, again, one of these guys that lives in the code, I was talking to him about it. He says, hey, legally, that doesn't even work. Not only do they have all the math problems, but let me give you this IRS code, how they're completely violating it. And so they bring it out, and it's like, yeah, guys, again, your greed to make insurance commissions has completely outweighed the laws and the rules that govern what you should be doing. And it's just horrible to see people do it, but it happens all day long in this industry, and it's something that gets very frustrating to me.
And Dave, that's why we're here, to help educate, to help others be aware of things like this, but not only to go through, but ask questions. And you can see through all the questions we've had here, and many of those we've answered in the past through this show. We've got our LinkedIn show. You've got your podcast. You also have so many other webinars out there. You have all the information out there through the website. The Prosperity Guy also has the Prosperity Club, where you can go and get instant access to all of the webinars you're teaching. Obviously, we're adding new ones each time, so we can keep that consistently updated. But I want to just encourage you that if you're watching, to go get that education, to go get the right information. And when you do find that, hey, you have the answers, or you think you have the answers, talk to Dave. I mean, Dave's here, and that's why we're here, to not only talk to him, but go set up a meeting with him, because that's why we're doing this, so that you can get yourself into a better retirement. Because right now, if you look at it and say, I'm just not ready, or I'm not there, this is the opportunity for you to stop wasting your time and your money and be able to find the resources that will help you.
It really is, CR. They've got such a good opportunity. And I would encourage anyone, if you've not taken our Changing World of Retirement class. Now, there is a fee for this class, but the fee you're going to pay versus the education. I mean, hey, if you got to the end of it, I would personally refund your money if you got to the end of it and said, I didn't feel like I got my money's worth out of that course, because we cover so many things that are so helpful. Our reviews on that class and the people we meet with afterwards to help them with their planning are so happy that they came through and were able to understand the retirement at a level that had never been able to understand it before.
And you can go to the prosperityguy.com, click on the events, and you'll find the Changing World of Retirement link on there, as well as all of your other webinars. But Dave, we're definitely out of time. I'm sorry I went off there. I just wanted to share a couple testimonials and let you know that what people are saying. And I really appreciate your time this week.
Yeah, I appreciate that, CR. And thank you for those that provide the support to us, because it is very helpful to know that we're heading down the right path, that we're doing the things that people want us to do to help them better understand that longest self-imposed period of unemployment that most people are going to have in their whole lifetime.
Exactly. Again, thank you so much for being here and for joining us live. And for those on replay, thank you so much for staying with us. And Dave, thanks for your time. And we'll see you guys all again next week.